we're losing 45% of all bee colonies every single year, year over year. On the planet today, we have 36% of the bee stock we had 50 years ago. That's it. Once that's gone, it's gone. Because bees pollinate 75% of all our fruit and vegetables all around the world, we would not be able to feed 8 billion people without bee pollination. We set out on a very audacious mission of saving the bees.
All right, and so what'd you build?
Today we have the best beekeeper on the planet, supersedes any other human beekeeper that you can imagine.
It's just not human.
It's not human. Even if you put 1,000 people around 1 million bees, we would not be able to tell every single bee in every single colony what's going on. The model does in milliseconds.
There's a lot of talk today about AI replacing people's jobs. This clearly replaces the beekeeper. What does the average beekeeper say about the BeeHome? There was a joke going on in the back here about honey laundering. What percentage of the honey in the United States is sold after it was honey laundered? Welcome back to another episode of Invested. I am thrilled to be here today with my old friend, can we say that? Saar Safra, who is the founder and CEO of Beewise. We'll start with, how long do we know each other?
I met you first in 1996, so I can't do the math. I'm too old for it, but 30 years.
That's incredible since you're only 40 years old. You were 10 when you pitched your first company? What
I
company was that?
I can say the same thing about you.
What company was that?
It was a company called, back then, called it Verai. We did P2P payments.
P2P payments in 1996.
Before X.com and PayPal.
Before X.com and PayPal. There were actually two P2P payments companies in Israel at the time, back then. One was a bunch of pilots, and then there was yours.
That's right.
And after that, you sold the company to Microsoft.
Right.
And spent how many years in Seattle?
Definitely overstayed my welcome. 15 years.
15 years in Seattle, Redmond, Washington, doing exactly what at Microsoft?
So I worked there at Microsoft. Actually, I worked for just a couple of years, a day after my earnout.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't a long stint. And then I left and founded another startup.
In the ad tech business,
in
right?
That was the first one that we sold.
The first one.
The second one was in the real estate business. We did resident portals for large multifamily apartment complexes. So if you lived in an apartment complex, you could pay rent online. You could meet your neighbors. You can kind of join the book club or the biking club, and that was our software back in the heydays of SaaS.
All this is a promo to say that you did P2P payments, ad tech, software for real estate, and now bees. And so, explain the career transition to bees.
Actually, it makes sense, right? Ad tech, PropTech, P2P payments, and then bees. That's just a
natural progression,
natural continuation. No, but but there is a good point there to be made, and I'll take 30 seconds to just talk about that. As you grow older, right? I'm around 50.
I'm around 50.
It's not 55. Just turn the corner.
Yeah.
So still not used to saying it. Yeah. No, but point being is that as you grow older, I feel on myself I become more dogmatic, and there's a more strict criteria of how I want to apply myself, on this planet, right? So when I had this kind of in between startups transition phase, I took a year and I decided to focus not on bees per se, but on something that had real impact in the real world in Israel, right? That was kind of part of my very almost strict criteria. It had to be a $1 billion business. It had to be deep technology. These are two things that I always kind of focus on. And it had to be a vertical. So when you add all these criteria, it leaves you very few spaces that you can actually operate in. Bees, or actually pollination, that would be the right kind of term, is one of those very laggards industries that are still fully manual, no technology, no industrial revolution has been here. Forget about AI, forget about robotics. So it was beautiful. It was like a shining ball that was like, oh, I have to do this because everything, points me in this direction.
I mean, I have to use the phrase, how'd you get the bug about bees?
Yeah. Every beekeeper you meet in your life, if you ask them why are they in the business, they'll tell you, we didn't find the bees found us. And my story kind of applies in the same way. I moved to Israel, and in that year, I kind of helped a few startups just establish more on the product side. That's kind of my forte. Pro bono, just to get to know the ecosystem. After being away for 15 years, you're basically the only person I knew in the country beyond my family. One of these guys was a beekeeper, and he came and he said, "Hey, Saar, I have an idea. I'm a beekeeper. I don't even know I don't know what a product manager is." I told him, you need product. He said, "I don't know what that is," but he basically said, I need help building this company." And his name is Elia. He's my co-founder till this day. The smartest human being I've ever met, and I'm very fortunate to be part of his journey. And I started to help him for 3 months. That was kind of my window. You get 3 months for free, and then I move on. And we built, we started there, and then I fell in love with the bees. There's more to that story, but that's kind of how they found me, through Elia.
Did you know any beekeepers before you met Elia?
I did not.
Okay, so you went through your life of almost 50 years and never met a beekeeper, and one guy walked in and said, "Hey, I need some help," and you said, "Sure, I'd love to help you with the
Yeah,
bees."
he gave me a 2-hour pitch, but yeah, I mean, he the thing is that there's a real need and there's a real problem in our food supply kind of industry, and bees are integral. They're in the heart of that, which we can talk about.
So let's take a step back. So
Sure.
bees have been around since the beginning of time. We think. We don't know.
150 million years.
Okay, and they've been pollinating
Yeah.
the world, and everything seems to be going just fine. And then all of a sudden we needed beekeepers at some point in time.
Everything seemed to be working fine, and then we came along.
No, wait. Before we get to you.
Not us. We humans.
Oh, we humans. Okay.
No, but look.
The royal we.
Yeah. The general we.
Yeah.
I wish it was really royal.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, right? Bees are nature's way to pollinate itself. The thing is that we tend to think of bees as a separate entity from trees or nature. They're not. We just humans, we see things as disparate and separate, but trees lure bees in with nectar. Bees are addicted to carbs like we are, like any living organism. They like the sugar. So they're being pulled and attracted by flowers that have nectar, right? So they come in, and the length of their tongue is the depth of the nectar in the flower. So they go in and they kind of swoop the nectar, but as they go in, the pollen is at the top of the flower. So the bee is negatively charged and a flower is positively charged. So there's electrostatic attraction between two. So the pollen sticks to the bee's hair. And when the bee moves from one flower to the other to collect nectar, that's how they pollinate. So essentially, bees are the tool for trees to pollinate themselves because trees are static. They can't move pollen from one to the other, right? So when you look at all these things, you basically see how a bee is a continuation of a flower, of a branch of a tree, of nature. It's pretty crazy. And so my point is that bees were here all along. We know they've been here for over 150 million years. I'll talk about that in a minute, how we know this. And then as humans came along, we started to kind of harvest bees for our own needs when we started kind of moving from hunter-gatherers to kind of more forming agriculture. And we use the bees in the way that they're used to being used. They pollinate, they do that. And we collect the honey. Bees will produce as much honey as there's forage, right? As long as there's forage, they'll produce honey, way more than they need. Honey is the food of bees. They collect honey during the summer, so they have food during the winter. It's their own food. They produce their own honey for themselves. But they will overproduce, which is what we can take for ourselves, and that's what humans have been doing for millennia, right? But about 50 years ago, the world changed. We know this today. It's not only climate change, it's also the pesticides we started to use to really kind of grow commercial grade agriculture and produce. It's the monoculture that came in. Today you have 2 million acres of almond in California, millions of acres of avocado in the same place, which means the bees have only one source of food. Bees only eat nectar, which is their carbs, and pollen, which is the protein. If the flowers don't bloom and there's avocados instead, that doesn't help the bees. There's no food source. You need flowers. So if you have 1 million acres of avocado that bloom only in April, That's it. It's a desert for bees. For us, it would look wonderful, a lot of green. For the bees, it's desert, 11 months throughout the year. So monoculture and all these practices essentially made it really hard on the bees.
So also when you prune the flowers off the trees then to get bigger fruit, which is commonly done in modern agriculture, that's bad for the bees too?
No, that happens. It's a good point. It depends when you do it, but you're right. If done right, it's after that the flowers have produced the pollen that they need to pollinate. It's when they become fruit set, and you're right. That's what is being done to get better quality of fruit eventually.
So before we get on to the modern bee problem, so producing pollination is a byproduct of the bee simply feeding itself.
Right.
And that's how trees reproduce, and we create fruits and more trees and all that other good. So when did the first beekeeper come into being?
Again,
the bees were fine for a long time. They didn't need babysitters or keepers or anything like that.
No, but what happened is because they produce honey, and honey is something we can talk about forever. It's a high quality, very very healthy product, right? You know, you apply honey on wounds. Cancer patients eat honey because it's the only thing they can eat. Honey has special qualities. Honey is basically flower nectar. And we know that most of the medicine in the world is beyond the chemical stuff is from nature. Honey is the same way, right? And it depends which flower you take it from.
Do you eat a lot of honey?
I do.
Do you eat it raw?
Of course.
How many spoons a day?
If I had to average, it would be very, very costly. So I prefer not to talk about, that expense. But we eat a lot of honey. It's very, very healthy.
You're very skinny though, so that sugar doesn't make you fat.
I feel like at my age, I'm starting to kind of grow a little bit. But honey is a carb, so you will grow fat from it.
Okay.
But it's very healthy. It's extremely healthy. It doesn't have any shelf life. You can keep honey for thousands of years.
Thousands of years?
They found honey in the pyramids of Giza in Egypt, and they tasted it. They didn't like the taste, but it was perfectly edible.
They didn't like the taste, but it was perfectly edible.
Yeah, the flora, the taste of the honey is based on the flowers.
Flower, kind of flower, yeah. Like avocado honey is different than
That's right. Lavender honey.
Lavender honey, right, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm personally partial to avocado honey for what it's worth.
It's not the greatest honey.
What's the best honey?
Again, I think it's a well-known fact. Manuka is the best honey in the world today. It's both the most healthy and the most delicious honey.
Explain to our audience what Manuka is.
Manuka is a type of flower that grows in very specific places on the planet, on mountaintops. It's like those movies that you see. There's a special flower that somebody searches their whole life. That's those.
What are those places that you can find Manuka?
They've in New Zealand and Australia, in very specific areas there, in high mountains in a specific climate, and they actually fly in hives using choppers so the bees can harvest the Manuka, and they take the hives out. So it's a very expensive honey. Some Manuka honey is sold at $1 million a kilo.
Have you tasted any?
I have not that expensive, but absolutely Manuka, yes, you can buy it.
And you taste the difference.
Yeah.
It's really that good.
Yeah.
How come you didn't buy me any? $1 million of what for the Manuka honey?
For a kilo of honey.
Kilo.
Yeah.
And people buy that?
There are people who can afford that, yeah. But look,
I'm sure people can afford it. The question is whether people actually spend $1 million on a kilo of honey.
Yeah.
They do. And what's the medicinal properties of it?
Honey has, many areas that it affects our health. First of all, in open wounds, you can.
You mentioned that, but specifically Manuka honey, you said was more healthy. What makes it more healthy?
I think it's I'm not an expert in the Manuka field, but antioxidants and it represses. It's mostly against cancer, being used against cancer.
Okay, so that's a premium cancer treatment. The chemicals for chemo, I guess, are cheaper than the Manuka honey at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And B, it doesn't solve issues, but it definitely helps.
Got it. I want to go back to the beekeepers. So when did beekeepers first arrive in?
So because honey is such a high quality kind of almost kind of free sugar alternative from way back when, many thousands of years ago, there's we see evidence that bees were grown domestically. as we started farming, both for their pollination capabilities and for the honey, right? So it's kind of a double whammy if you grow bees as a farmer. And when people started farming, really, I mean, tens of thousands of years ago, there's evidence that they use bees for pollination and for the honey.
And that they collected them?
Yeah. And they grew them in plastic, or not plastic, in like baskets.
In wicker baskets.
Yeah, like straw baskets.
Straw baskets.
Yeah.
They grew the honey, the
bees, the colonies.
What does it mean to grow a bee?
So, yeah, that's a good question. Because bees go out and forage in the field, you can't really fence it, right? It's not like cattle that you can fence it. It's still livestock, but you can't fence it. So you have to create an environment for the bees to come back home after they forage in the field. And usually you do that by giving the queen a good, safe place to live and lay her eggs. And if that works well, then the bees come back to their queen. The bee is a submissive creature. So once after 24 hours with the queen, it becomes submissive to that queen. That's based on pheromones. And so the bee will go out and forage and come back to her queen. If her home is not safe or not good enough for them to grow their colony, they will leave. You will lose them. That's what's called a swarm. They will swarm away and leave their home.
And what makes a home safe for a queen bee?
So in nature, bees find a good home in a trunk of a tree. It's a kind of not too humid, closed area with one entrance that they can go in and out, where they can grow their combs, right, the frames, and that's where they lay their eggs, store the nectar, store the honey, store the pollen in those kind of honeycombs that we're used to seeing. So they usually do
in nice hotels they put up there for you to kind of scoop the honey out of.
Exactly.
That's where most people have seen them. I don't think they've seen them in nature.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. We don't see them in nature as much. But yeah, I mean, if even today, if bees swarm away, they will swarm to a trunk of a tree.
Interesting. But again, what makes that straw basket or a wood box, generally painted white, a safe home for a queen bee?
It's painted white against the heat of the sun.
Yeah.
So these are the considerations, right? You give the bees an enclosed area with an entrance, and you try it. When this box was founded, it's called the Langstroth Hive.
Yeah.
It was founded in 1850.
1850. The white box was
invented by Lorenzo Langstroth. And he patented them, by the way. And today, in 2026, that's the standard. That's the norm all around the world, from China to the U.S. and everything in between.
Unbelievable. 175 years. Guy invented a wood box, and it's still the standard for cultivating bees.
That wood box worked really great in 1850 because it was a good enough sanctuary for bees. They found it good and comfortable. And it was great for us humans to harvest the honey because it has these frames that you can just pull out and just collect the honey.
How many frames in an average box?
Today it's 10. That's and again, it's pretty amazing. That's what he invented in 1850. And because he was smart enough to patent it for the first 15 years, it caught on and it stayed. And it just shows you kind of how inertia works. It worked great. On the planet, there were 1 billion people. We didn't need as much pollination, and not much honey was being consumed. But as demand grew, the technology didn't keep up, and we're still using these boxes today to feed 8 billion people. 75% of all the fruit and vegetables that they eat are pollinated by bees in these wooden boxes that are being transferred and hauled around.
So tell everybody about that, because before we get on to what Beewise does, this is like an important background. So today, if I need to pollinate 2 million acres of almonds in California, or 1 million acres of avocado, how do I get enough bees there to pollinate it?
So today, fast forward to 2026, pollination and beekeeping is a commercial grade business, meaning that you have commercial beekeepers that grow thousands and tens of thousands of bee colonies in those boxes in the beehives. And they move them around between pollination opportunities throughout the year. Nature has made it so that there's not much competition between competing crops. So you have crops from January all the way to November, and you have a few crops every month. But what beekeepers do is they bring the bees in, they just place them in the field. The bees do their thing. They go in and out and they forage in the field, they pollinate. And then after about a month to a month and a half, they move those hives to the next crop and the next crop.
How do they move these hives?
On trucks. They haul them around, 18-wheelers.
18-wheeler trucks, pack the bees, top to bottom.
Yeah. Put them like in, 4 or 5 stories high.
How many bees are on those trucks?
400, ballpark 400 colonies. Each colony is about 50,000 bees. It's a very powerful
If my math is right, is my math right? You'll tell me in a second. You said 400 boxes.
Yeah.
Each one with 50,000 bees in them?
Yes.
Each of the boxes with 50,000 bees in them?
Yes.
So we're at
200 million bees.
200 million bees on a flatbed truck?
Give or take.
Okay. And nobody gets bit by this?
Yeah, the beekeepers get stung.
Yeah.
Right.
The drivers of the trucks?
They wear suits.
They wear suits.
Yeah. Everybody's suited up in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we move bees during the night when they're asleep. Bees are asleep. They don't go out at night.
Really?
Yeah. They like 8 hours of sleep. There's a lot of similarities to us if you think about it. And so usually,
what happens when a bee doesn't get 8 hours of sleep?
it's antsy.
You've seen this? Like, you know this?
Yeah. Bees are angry. They have moods.
And then what do?
They're more prone to sting.
Yeah.
You can when you're next to a colony and it's a little bit antsy, you would feel it. They will bump into you, into your suit. They will buzz around you. They will swarm around you. Suddenly you'll see a cloud of bees around your head, even if you're suited up and geared up. And if they're calm, you will feel it. You'll put your hand. They'll walk all over you calmly. You can actually sense the mood of the colony.
Can a beekeeper feed them Advil PM? Put them back to sleep? Does that work?
Bees do get medicine as well, right?
That feels dangerous to me.
Well, bees have viruses like we do.
And what's their medicine?
They have stomach virus. They have stomach flu, deformed wings. They have a lot of different eczema. They have different viruses, and they get like droplets of.
You give them?
Yeah, we give them medicine.
Interesting. We'll come to you in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're transporting flatbed trucks to the almond growers in California or the.
Then you move up to Washington, to Oregon, Washington for apple, peach, canola. Then you move inland for more of the canola, sunflower, and sunflower seeds, and so on. And then they move all the way to the East Coast to pollinate the different type of berries, blackberries, blueberries, and so on. And then even some go all the way down to Florida for the citruses pollination.
What do you mean some of them have to go to Florida? How are you going to get oranges if you don't get the bees there?
Pollination is not a binary thing, right? Yeah, like you would get some yield without bees necessarily.
Got it. Just not as much.
Not as much, yeah. For almonds, for example, you'll get 10% of your yield without bees. Same for avocado. For
10%?
10%. For coffee, you'd get 50% without bees. So it's a significant uptick in yield. And when you think about commercial, everything is about the bottom line and numbers, right?
So when I truck in 400 million bees, what does that cost the almond farmer?
So the way the almond farmer pays is they pay per hive. They get
per box?
Per box.
Yeah.
So they would bring in, let's say, if you're a typical almond farmer, you'd bring in, let's call it 5,000 hives, and you would pay $200 per hive.
Per hive.
For that pollination event. If you have an avocado field and you need another pollination down the road, you'll pay another, whatever that would be, $100, $150 for that avocado. Again, for every.
Oh, it's cheaper depending on almonds are more expensive to pollinate than avocados.
It's a matter of competing crops. During February and March, you have the most competing crops, so those crops garner the highest cost per hive. As you go throughout the year, it becomes cheaper.
So it's seasonal.
It is.
There's seasonal pricing for bees.
Yes.
Are there different parts of the year where the bees do a better job of pollinating than others?
No.
Workhorses.
Yeah, bees are amazing. They will pollinate 1,000 flowers a day. They will fly for 12 hours. They will produce, a teaspoon of honey throughout their lifetime, and they cost a thousandth of a cent. 1 US cent divided by 1,000. That's the cost of a bee. So think about how effective.
Why is my honey so damn expensive then?
Because I guess you buy good quality honey, right?
We'll come back to that in a second. We have to come back to honey afterwards. Okay, now having done this entire introduction to the world of bees that we're in, tell everybody what Beewise does.
We set out on a very audacious mission of saving the bees in order to secure global food supplies. Because bees pollinate 75% of all our fruit and vegetables all around the world, right? And we really like our produce. We like fresh produce in every street corner, anywhere you go, again, from China to the US. The bees are essential. They're an essential input into global farming. Not many people know this. If I would tell you you need irrigation for produce, you would get that and you would understand it's infrastructural and it's a critical input. The same with pollination. We would not be able to feed 8 billion people with all the produce and coffee that we drink without bee pollination. So they're a critical input into global farming. On the other hand, they're collapsing. Today, we're losing a lot of our bee colonies. The global average rate is 45%. We're losing 45% of all bee colonies every single year, year over year.
But say that again. So if we have 1 million bee colonies now, we obviously have more than that. Let's say we have 1 million bee colonies right now. At the end of 2026, there will be 550,000.
Correct.
And then at the end of 2027, there will be something like 300,000.
Correct.
And that's good. That means that very fast. If that's been going on, how long has that been going on for?
That hasn't been going on for too long. In the last 50 years, we started to see decline in bee colonies. But in the last 5 years, let's call it 7, 8 years, it started to grow dramatically.
What? Meaning the rate of destruction, of collapse is growing. Yes. But if that's true, that it's been shrinking 45% for the last 8 years, we should be at 90% reduction roughly of bee colonies over the last 8, 9 years. Is that right? So
today, the 45% is relatively recent. When we founded the company back in 2018, it was closer to 30%, which was alarming to us.
So there's still an accelerating decline of bee colonies around the world?
Year over year, yeah.
What's happening to them?
By the way, last year in the U.S., the formal number released by the USDA was 62%.
62% of bee colonies collapsed.
The U.S. lost 62% of its bee stock in that single year.
In 2025.
In 2025. And so what happens is there's areas on the planet that don't lose as much, like 10, 15, 20%. So we buy bees from them. Basically, we're hauling bees all around the world.
You buy bees from them or people buy bees from them?
Everybody.
Everybody buys. Which are the best places for bee production right
now? Australia and New Zealand were the best because they had the least issues with bees.
Those manuka flowers again.
Well, yeah, but also other things that Australia did really well.
Such as?
It's an island, so it's easier to control everything that's going on, everything that's coming in.
So they didn't do anything well other than being sent to a penal
colony. When was the
colony.
last time that you traveled to Australia?
Never in my life. I've never been.
So if you travel to Australia, a funny thing happens on the plane. You get sprayed on the plane on the way there. They basically spray you up and clean you up on the planes that are coming into Australia to make sure you're not bringing any pathogens.
Interesting.
So Australia is really very sensitive to everything that's coming in and out. This is why it was able to kind of maintain a high quality of bee economy or
Where
industry.
else are bees flourishing?
Other areas that are less industrial.
Okay, such as?
Not Israel, but other places. Africa, there's some good places where you can get good bees. They're just a little bit different in Africa, the bee type.
What makes the bees different in Africa?
Africanized bees are a little bit more aggressive. Yeah.
Aggressive on what?
Aggressive towards people. So they're the same bee. It's called the honeybee, but they're a little bit more aggressive. But not something that would prevent us from growing bees, right? But just
put on a thicker suit.
That's right.
Like that. Okay,
you just have to be more sensitive.
Okay, so bee colonies are collapsing around the world. The United States, 62% in 2025. Things are better in Australia because they spray you with all sorts of things on the airplanes.
That's just an example.
And in Africa, things are better also, but it's more dangerous because. And so into this world of a 175-year-old bee box and beekeepers steps Beewise. And so what are you doing now?
What we realized is that the actual beehive is the bottleneck because in order to treat bees for all the modern stressors we've exposed them to, pesticides, pests, disease that didn't used to be, monoculture, lack of forage, lack of biodiversity, all those things have a very negative impact on bees in the form of colony collapse. And we realized that the real problem was the box, the hive, because the hive doesn't allow you to take any proactive action in real time in the field. And so you need beekeepers to haul themselves and travel to the fields every single day, open every box, look inside, identify what's going on. So you need a level of expertise and then apply a certain treatment. It could be things like feeding the bees because there's only avocados and there's no more flowers right now. It could be giving them water, medicine, again, preventing pesticides from going in, which is not something we can do in real time. But point being is that it all depended on people getting to the right place in the right time, which is practically impossible.
So let me just cut you off one second. This is important. I have a farm, so we have beehives. So beehives don't sit centrally. If you've ever seen them, they're actually spread around fields.
That's right.
Because they have to each have their own foraging areas with which to go. And so the beekeeper needs to walk around or run around and sometimes drive around to all these places and find each individual beehive and open it up and look inside and see what's going on. He pulls out the rack, the frame from there. And also because these beehives are in the field, when they spray pesticides on the field, a byproduct of that is it gets into the beehives.
And it kills the bees.
The
ratio between a commercial beekeeper and hives is 1 to 1,000.
One beekeeper for 1,000 hives.
Which means the frequency of visit for every hive is once a month.
Okay. A lot can happen in a month to a bee.
That's right. So, and the best beekeepers are able to do it once every 3 weeks. But the problem is beekeepers work always in arrears. They get there and they realize, I lost a colony. This colony is famished. This colony is dead out of disease. And that's the only way they operate. All they can do is just replace the colony with a new one, buy colonies and replace them. And that's why we're seeing high colony collapse rates. And when we realized this early on in the company, there were a lot of solutions for bees. There were a lot of startups out there and technologies to try and help bees. But we felt like there were more products looking for a problem than really solutions to the main problem. The main problem was you got to get rid of that hive and you got to be able to treat in real time in the field. That's a big, hairy problem to solve. It's expensive. It's hard. Bees, it's a biological model. There's many of them. You need to identify, you need to treat, you need to do this in real time in the field. It's basically, we had to completely revolutionize the industry from the bottom up. And that's
175 years of history in one white box.
That's right.
All right. And so what'd you build?
We built a different box. We built what is called a BeeHome. It's still a box, but it operates a little bit differently. The bees are in there in the same frames. The biology is the same for the bees, same frames, same honeycombs that they're used to. But we have a layer of cameras that monitor the bees 24/7. And again, our beehive can contain 10 colonies. That's 10 times
10 boxes.
10 boxes, yeah. That's between 500,000 to 1 million bees.
Okay, so first of all, it's a much bigger, your box is a bigger box.
It's like a big dinner table, right?
Because you can do 10 colonies.
Oh,
so
correct.
It's a much bigger box. Is it made out of wood?
No, it's made out of tin.
Tin.
Yeah.
Is that good for the bees? It gets hotter in there, I bet.
No. We thermoregulate. So I'll talk about the box in a second, but it has cameras that monitor the bees, and it has AI models that actually identify what's going on with the bees. By the way, these AI models, we don't use LLMs or like the new kind of new models out there. We had to build our own model, which is called LBM, a large biological model.
Not a large bee model?
A large biological. You can do a large bee model as well. But we have to monitor up to 1 million bees using cameras and other sensors, sound, temperature, vibrations, and humidity. And we have to, the model has to identify what is going on with the bees in the device. It's incredible. Even if you put 1,000 people around 1 million bees, we would not be able to tell every single bee in every single colony what's going on. The model does in milliseconds. The model looks at all this data and can tell you this colony is hungry, this colony is sick, this is the virus that it has, not only that it's sick, which virus it actually has. This colony, there's pesticides outside, shut down the device. The model tells you everything. And then we also added a robot inside this box, a small robot that can navigate along the hives and apply the treatment in real time.
It's a robotic arm? It's a robot on wheels?
It's a robot on wheels.
Inside the tin.
Yeah. And it has 2 arms.
BeeHome.
Yeah. It can pull out frames It can put in medicine. It can put in food. It can put in water. It can shut down the entrances and open them up after 12 hours to prevent pesticides from coming in.
Oh, so if it's in the field and you know that they're going to put pesticides out, fumigate the field with pesticides, you can shut the BeeHome down.
It does it automatically.
It does it automatically.
The nice thing about this is, everybody talks about how AI will kill us eventually.
Yeah.
We actually see AI, how it's helping humanity. We have thousands of these devices in the field operating 24/7. They're all solar powered. And the AI identifies and decides and defines what to do. It programs the robot to go apply treatment. And this is being done right now as we speak, from California to Florida, from Texas to North Dakota, all over the US.
And so just to be clear, though, we call this AI and you call this an LBM. By the way, I was just thinking about it. You could have called it BLM. It could have been Bee Lives Matter.
Well, BLM is
could have taken the sting of some of the other BLM things out of some of the
they're
other
already
BLM
taken.
things.
They're already taken BLM.
Yeah. You could have rehabilitated it or repented it, perhaps. Repurposed it. Yeah. And, so this is machine vision, right? You got cameras and machine vision.
Among other things, yeah.
Among other things. What are the other elements of the technology?
So there's a lot of data inputs: temperature, humidity of the colonies. They produce their own temperature.
Multi-sensor environment. Yeah.
Vibrations and sound.
Whoa, vibrations. What is that?
Because bees have the waggle dance.
Waggle dance.
Are you not familiar with that?
No.
What kind of bee lover are you? I thought you were an expert by the way you present yourself. I'm
in the old-fashioned one. I got those white boxes in my fields. Yeah, because you didn't supply me a BeeHome.
I remember that. You're still holding that against me, aren't you?
I am, actually. You promised.
So the idea with bees is bees communicate using vibrations and pheromones. Those are the two ways bees communicate. So a bee will find a source of food. It will fly back to its colony, and using a dance, it will actually direct all the colony to the source of the food. It will direct them via direction, distance, and kind of how it is related to the sun using a dance. The bees understand that dance, and then they go as a group to swarm on that food source. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we monitor that. The AI, and this is the beauty of it, right? AI, it can gather humongous amounts of data, connect the dots, do predictive analysis. It knows what the bees is doing, so it can identify what is going on, and then very quickly apply treatments. It doesn't, at the beginning, it didn't always apply the right treatment. There's also reinforcement learning. There's different type of neural networks in there, convolutional and recurrent, and some of them are reinforcement. So it tries different things and it learns, and over time it becomes really good. Today we have the best beekeeper on the planet. Supersedes any other human beekeeper that you can imagine.
It's just not human.
It's not human. And we see treatments that are being applied in the Negev desert locally that have been learned in Arizona because the environment had
Meaning the human beekeeper in the Negev desert, or do you have
the robot beekeeper?
You have BeeHomes in the Negev desert.
Yes.
Only I didn't get one.
You're never going to let that go, are you?
No. But no. Relentlessness is one of my characteristics. I got it from my grandmother.
That's one of the things you need as an entrepreneur investor, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
And so you have a BeeHome in the Negev desert. And in the Negev desert, it learned from your AI model in Arizona that it needs to do what?
Let's just say we saw certain behaviors in some of our BeeHomes in the desert here that we thought were unusual. We didn't understand why they were happening. And when we kind of we did the backwards kind of analysis, we realized that these were learnings and reinforcement learnings that happened very, very far away in Arizona.
So it came back to your central model from data it picked up in Arizona, and then it changed the behavior of the beehive in the Negev desert. But this could be dangerous also, right? Because the model, it does this in an automated way, may pick up on something in Arizona that actually does not apply to the climate or the circumstances or the pesticides used in the Negev desert, and you could end up screwing up the bee colony in the Negev desert and hurting our food supply.
Yes.
Because of what happened in Arizona.
The first heart transplant human died. You remember that, right? That was in the 1960s. But today,
I don't remember that. I'm not that old.
No, but not being old. But it's a well-known fact. But point being is,
you asked me if I remembered that. I remember you didn't give me a BeeHome. I don't remember the first heart transplant guy died.
That's a common theme that's gonna come back on me. I get it.
Mhm.
Okay, I think I have no option but to bring you a BeeHome after this podcast.
That's why you've been invited to the podcast.
I have one in my car in a trunk. I can bring it over. But point being is that during we're 7 years into it. We've had by this point almost 1 trillion videos and photos fed into the models.
Wow.
And our model is centralized. It's in the cloud. You know, we're
Yep.
we're an Amazon shop, an AWS shop, and
Yep.
so that's why I'm saying the learnings apply. We also have, by the way, BeeHomes in Dubai today. These are the only 3 locations we have them on the planet, in the U.S., in Israel, and in Dubai.
All great allies today.
Yeah,
Members of the Abraham Accords.
that's right.
It's an Abrahamic bee colony.
But also all challenging areas for bees, which kind of extend our technology
Mhm.
and prove why it's so important. In the UAE, by the way, until our devices, 100% of their bee population dies every single year. It just can't withstand
Really?
the summer.
It's too hot for the bees in the
It's too hot for
summer.
the bees, and so they buy bees every year. They need bees for pollination, for honey. They have a very unique honey that they do only over there called cedar. It's actually almost as good as Manuka. Some even say better.
Mm.
And it's only grown through the mangrove trees in the UAE, the only place on the planet.
Why is that? There are mangrove trees in other places.
That's true, but characteristics that exist there, I'm not sure why, but theirs is very unique and different. And
I've seen Dubai chocolate branded like in airports. I've never seen Dubai honey.
the cedar honey, you can read about it. It's called cedar. There's a lot of types of mangrove honey, but the cedar honey specifically is one of the best qualities on the planet. But point being, for us, you know, we wanted to take our technology and challenge it in the most extreme areas. So
Mhm.
you can get North Dakota during the winter.
Yeah.
That's easy. We got that. And then you can get Dubai during the summer. And if you can kind of help bees survive in these extreme environments, you know, you have a good.
What do you do?
technology
Air
ahead.
conditioning for the bees in the tin can?
We thermoregulate. That's true. We have both.
Thermoregulate. You refuse to let me use the word air conditioning. You thermoregulate the bees.
We do, because it's more than just air conditioning, right?
Mhm.
Some of it is passive.
Mhm.
There's airflows that are open and closed to conserve energy,
Mhm.
but some of it is also active. Like in the desert, there's enough sun that you can actually air condition
Mhm.
all summer long.
Solar powered air conditioning for
right.
the bees.
Yes,
You always want better for your bees.
yes.
And how many units do you have in Dubai?
Oh, just a few.
Just a
We-
few
we
to
haven't
start.
we
But it's
haven't-
working.
It's beautiful. They
And the
love it.
bees survive through the summer?
Yes, they do.
So you're like growing a new bee colony in Dubai. What did they do before you could fly in bees to Dubai? They didn't have honey, I guess.
They would transport them on trucks
On-
or on trains. Yeah,
On boats?
On boats. You can haul bees around the world in many different ways.
And what do they want to pollinate for there, or they just want the honey?
Both. Dubai, especially after, not only Dubai, but like after COVID.
Yeah.
Remember when this is something you do remember, right? When the ports closed down.
Yes.
Many countries that are kind of dependent on external on imports were in a bind because everything shut down.
Yep.
You can get food, and suddenly people realize that bees are part of your national security. You know, in the U.S., there's the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Bees are not categorized under the USDA. They're categorized under the DOD, the Department of Defense.
Really?
Bees are considered in the United States of America as national security.
In Israel, they consider them national security
No,
bees?
they're not.
They're not. In
In
Dubai,
Israel-
are they under national security?
I don't know. But in the U.S., the funding for the bees comes from the Department of Defense.
This actually makes sense, by the way.
It
That
does.
your food security is a matter of national security and should be treated as such.
That's my point.
It's very forward thinking about the Emiratis
That's exactly right.
and Israel to actually, the Emiratis have started to think about this very clearly. I know Qatar also thought about this, and Israel kind of thinks about this, but not sufficiently.
I think the
Forward
Emiratis.
thinking of the United States to put in the Department of Defense.
Yes, I think the Emiratis understand very well. Again, they're everybody knows they're very strategic about everything,
Very.
and they think they understand that pollination is if you want to have a vibrant agricultural industry, pollination is part of that, and they understand that today. So does, for example, Singapore and other kind of island states,
Mhm.
right? Understand that that are highly dependent on imports today suddenly start to identify and understand that not only the bees but the technology that keeps the bees alive is equally important.
There's, I assume, insatiable demand for this.
Yeah, there's 11 times more demand than actual devices we have.
And so, how do you handle that?
We raise capital for manufacturing and we raise debt for manufacturing. It's a slow process. We're still a startup.
How many can you produce a year of these BeeHomes?
So we work with contract manufacturers in Mexico because most of our biggest market is in the U.S. It's easier to manufacture in Mexico and just transport to the land. Our current manufacturer can manufacture 6,500 a year.
6,500 BeeHomes a year.
BeeHomes a year, yeah.
6,500 BeeHomes a year that each holds 10 hives.
Correct. We're not there yet. We only manufacture about 1,000 a year. We're still in the early process of that, but hopefully some more good news around that coming in the next year.
And I assume you're sold out on your 1,000 BeeHomes?
Yeah. No, we have a couple of thousand. They're all sold out, but like I said, we've already been paid for 11,000 BeeHomes.
Right.
So we're waiting for many more to come.
I got to find another place to manufacture. Maybe they'll manufacture them in Dubai. They're good at that.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're thinking about. Because in Dubai or in the UAE, not necessarily Dubai, but in the UAE, they really offer, and they have like a no tax zones.
Yeah.
And they offer incredible incentives if you want to manufacture there. It's something we're considering.
What is, like, play this movie forward 10 years, and there's now, I don't know, 20,000 BeeHomes around. What has changed in the world? What will I notice? What will the average person listening to this podcast notice that has changed in the world because of BeeHomes?
The first and foremost, the way I think about it is always I start from the unit level, at the BeeHome level. We measure our success by colony collapse. So instead of seeing 30, 40, 50, 60% colony collapse in the industry, in our devices, we experience less than 8% colony collapse. Across our device, this is not in the lab, in the field, across our devices. And again, we have thousands of them, which gives us high confidence that this is something we can maintain. And it keeps going down, right? So we all these BeeHomes are being software updated every week, once a week, over the air, with just bug fixes, enhancements, improvements, and
bug fixes. That's a good one. Yeah,
not bee fixes, bug fixes.
Okay.
And so this is how we kind of control colony collapse, and that's our success metric. Because if you have more bees, you have better pollination, and they produce more honey, so your yields go up.
Yep.
Right. So if it works at the unit level, now take every one of these devices, throw them anywhere you want on the planet, especially in places that need them, like Africa and South America. Plenty of sun, they're solar powered, and you will dramatically increase or decrease the colony collapse rates in those areas. What is the outcome of that? Higher yields. So for the same piece of land, you would get better yield of the crop.
So lower cost of food.
Lower cost of food.
Yep.
Better quality of food.
Yeah.
And most of all, it's great for the biodiversity of that area because bees don't only pollinate the avocado flowers, they will pollinate any type of flower in that region, in that 3-mile radius that they will bump into.
That's a bee radius is 3 miles.
Usually that's the comfort zone. A bee can fly even 40 miles, but the comfort zone she pollinates in is 3 miles.
Interesting.
If she doesn't have a home to come back to, you can fly way further than 3 miles.
So you created something called like an impact report. What do you call it? You have a good name for it. What is it called?
Every year we release our impact report, and we actually count what is the true impact of what we did, and we measure that by how many bees we saved, because we compare that to the wooden boxes. If you take bees from the wooden box and move them to our tin box, to our robotic hive, you will save 30 to 40% of all that bee colonies that will stay alive in our device.
So there's a lot of talk today about AI replacing people's jobs. This clearly replaces the beekeeper. What does the average beekeeper say about the BeeHome?
Out of all the constituents and stakeholders in the industry, the beekeepers love us the most.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Why?
First of all, we're not replacing beekeepers. We're replacing the labor that doesn't exist. Remember how I told you there's one beekeeper for every 1,000 hives?
Yeah.
Which is why they lose so many colonies.
Yeah.
It's not that that's what they want. There's just not labor. There's no labor to be found to actually increase that rate. How many people do you know that finished school and decided I'm going to be a beekeeper for the rest of my life?
I know 2.
Yeah.
I don't know if they finished school. I know 2 beekeepers.
But you know many more that are not. And so point being, right? Point being is that there's just not enough labor, especially with the cost of labor today going up in the Western world. It's really hard to find labor, and so we're not really replacing the beekeeper's job. But what are we doing? We don't have bees. We don't grow bees. We're a technology company. We provide the box. You still need the beekeeper.
Yeah, but it grows in the bees.
Correct.
Grow in the box.
But the bees are not
and
ours.
multiply.
The bees are not our asset. It's the beekeepers. The beekeepers have to bring in the bees. So
So there's a beekeeper per each one of your boxes?
Correct. They're not a beekeeper per se, but there's an owner of the bees. That's the commercial beekeeper. He has 10,000 colonies. We come to him and we go together to the growers. We go to Olam and Driscoll's and the big growers, and we tell them it's the same bees you're used to. You've been using this beekeeper for,
I got it.
30 years.
Your customers, the commercial beekeepers, who instead of shipping wood boxes, is now shipping a tin can.
Correct.
That has 10 the equivalent of 10 colonies in it.
Correct.
Yeah, like a funny question. So, your AI kills like 99%. I saw some of like Verona mites without any chemicals, without anything. Just explain to the common listener what that means.
Wow, Varroa is like the worst thing that could happen to humans.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even affect us. It's a mite on the bees. So there's a mite that 100% of the bees have them. If it would be on a human, it would be the size of a backpack. It's as if you'd be wearing a backpack. It sits on the back of a bee or on the torso of a bee, and it basically consumes the bee's liver and health system. So the bees lose all their immunity with this varroa, and so they're very susceptible to disease. Varroa is the worst thing that could happen to bees and to pollination to humans. 100% of the bees have it. And so today in nature, for example, a bee colony could not last more than a year. If it doesn't have beekeepers helping it wouldn't last more than a year. The only treatment that beekeepers have for varroa is a chemical treatment. They basically put chemicals inside the hives. This is why in the US, there is no organic honey. Honey cannot be organic. Even if the forage is organic,
That's interesting.
there's still chemicals inside the hive to treat for varroa. What we do is we use a heat treatment. There's a difference in how much temperature bees can sustain versus varroa. Kind of like when you're sick, you raise temperature, you have fever, your body is using fever to fight pathogens. You can sustain 100, 105, or 44
Right, but the pathogen can't.
We use a similar method with the bees.
You give the bees fever.
We give them fever, which they can sustain, it's fine, for about 40 minutes. It kills all the varroa. We have 99.9%.
Who came up with this? It's incredible.
It's not actually our patent, but what happens is it's not really feasible in the field. What are you going to do? You're going to come with a microwave to the field for every wooden box, wait 40 minutes for each frame? We have a robot that does it 24/7 for 3 days, takes care of 10 hives at no cost. It's all solar powered. It's beautiful. So the idea that with a robot is you can apply treatments that are not scalable, right? That are very effective and intimate because you have a robot. That's why we're not replacing beekeepers. A beekeeper would never do this. They will still use chemicals. We're the only commercial player in the market today that manages tens of thousands of colonies that does not use chemicals for honey. The only ones on the planet.
You'll be introducing organic honey into the United States for the first time ever.
We're going to try. We're going to try.
Before we came on, there was a joke going on in the back here about honey laundering. Want to tell everyone about honey laundering?
You know, it's a term we coined. It's like money laundering. Basically, today,
I figured that out.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's not a term you'd hear anywhere else. But basically, today there's a lot of honey that is being dumped on the markets that is not real honey. It's rice syrup or corn syrup. It looks like honey. It has the same texture, but it's just the worst sweetener on planet Earth. It has so many negative impacts on the human body. It shouldn't be consumed. But it's being sold as honey, and that's called dumping. There's anti-dumping rules all over the world, especially in the Western countries, which is why there's different routes that this honey goes through different countries like Vietnam, that sells it to India, that sells it to Argentina, that sells it to the US, kind of like money laundering routes. And eventually you buy honey off the shelf, but only 10% of it is real honey. 90% of it is a sweetener that just does harm to your body.
Where do they make like this rice crap that they call honey, or the corn crap they call honey? Far East mostly?
In various countries around the world.
You don't want to say which countries?
Yeah, I don't know specifically. They're not being.
What percentage of the honey in the United States is sold after it was honey laundered?
Let's just say that in the U.S. there's very specific rules that don't allow imports of honey from China
But does some get in anyway?
through honey laundering routes.
Through honey laundering. So what percentage of honey in the United States do you think is actually honey laundered?
This is not based on facts.
Yeah.
Just based on my hunch, 60 to 70%.
Wow. 60 to 7% of all the honey you buy in your Kroger's, your Albertsons, I assume the supermarkets are still around, your Eagles, it has honey laundered honey in it, and it's only 10% real honey or 20% real honey, as the case may be. There was a similar problem with olive oil, by the way, coming out of Europe for a while also, right? They would put other kinds of oil in olive oil and call it olive oil.
And they solved it.
Right.
Solved it.
How'd they solve it?
So in Europe, actually, they now they invented a technology that can actually tell you in a honey jar how much of it is actually real honey.
Oh yeah,
it's not. Honey. It's relatively a novel piece of technology, so it's not kind of widespread yet.
Mm-hmm.
But in Europe, they're starting to kind of really crack down on that. So they're going to be less affected by it. But the U.S., by the way, in the U.S., only about 25 to 30% of the honey that is being consumed in the U.S. is produced in the U.S.
Where do they get it from?
Imports.
From where?
It doesn't matter.
Got it. Okay.
Because of honey laundering, eventually you get the same honey from the same places going through all different places.
Wow.
The same thing applies here in Israel, by the way.
We have honey laundering here too?
Yeah. From the same sources of honey.
Really?
Same problems, yeah.
Who are the perpetrators here in Israel?
The thing is that they don't even know because they're buying honey from Turkey or Vietnam. But you don't know the route that this honey came from.
What's the safest way to ensure I don't get laundered honey?
Buy honey from your local beekeeper. Seriously, go to the local beekeeper, and there's always a beekeeper around somewhere in the vicinity.
Sure.
Maybe
in Tel Aviv, you can always find one on the corner.
No, but you drive an hour away. Tel Aviv, you don't even have to drive an hour. Just drive 30 minutes, and you're like in the outskirts. Find a beekeeper, Sunday markets, or just shops that sell beekeepers' honey, and buy the honey from there. That's real honey.
Who's your favorite beekeeper in Israel that you like to buy honey from?
I can't play favorites.
You love all your beekeepers.
I love my beekeepers.
Tell me, so your partner Elia is a beekeeper. I've met him. He's an incredible guy. Big long beard. He still have the beard?
Yeah,
I haven't seen him in a few years.
Yeah.
And I think you couldn't have two more different backgrounds. You're a high-tech guy. He's a beekeeper. What have you learned from each other, you think?
I've learned so much from him. He's just, again, think about his journey. He started from, he was a commercial beekeeper. That's what he went to school for. He learned beekeeping. He worked at beekeeping. Today, he manages our revenue teams in the U.S. He lives in the U.S.
You relocated him?
I totally made him a different person.
Where is he? California?
Yeah, in the Bay Area. Okay. Our offices are in San Ramon, so he's like 45 minutes across the bridge. He managed our revenue team, a huge team of about 25 people doing both sales and operations. He went through being the product manager of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, he was kind of more the subject matter expert. But in 7 years, what this guy has accomplished, what he learned, the progress he went through, he barely knew how to use a computer. He knew how to write an email, but it would take him 20 minutes to write, 2 sentences. Today, the guy is a wizard.
Wow.
He's a wizard. You would see him, you'd be blown away.
An AI beekeeper.
He talks the language, He talks both languages. He can go and talk to beekeepers about beekeeping, and he go and talks to investors, VCs about, venture capital.
I think I'm correct. You have teams in the U.S. and teams in Israel, and you have a team in the Ukraine also, right?
We have a team in Ukraine. We have a team in Poland.
And a team in Poland.
Yeah.
So you've confronted managing a company through war for like the last 4 years.
Yeah.
What are your key insights and pieces of advice and thoughts on that?
I think that you mentioned this at the beginning, right? Being relentless and being flexible. We've been tested around those traits in the company. uh, started. I mean, it's like black swan after the other, right? Started with
Mm-hmm.
COVID, then the interest rates around the world collapsed, and wars, both in Ukraine, then in Israel. Like we have people serendipitously all over the place wherever there's war. I feel like, but yeah, I mean, it's a challenge to maintain talent, um, and maintain throughput throughout these circumstances. I would say I can't pinpoint and say there's something specific that we did right or wrong. I'm sure we did every mistake in the book along the way. Um, we're still around, but that's also never guaranteed, right? You know, we're still
What's
hanging
something you'd
around
like to
there.
say to your employees in Israel and the Ukraine, and conversely, let's say in the U.S. who haven't gone through the war about these periods?
I'll say one thing. Because we build hardware, right? It's a much harder endeavor to maintain because you can't do that from home.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a hybrid model. We never had. We work from the office,
Mm-hmm.
and our offices in Israel are 6 kilometers from the Lebanon border. And my team is there every single day, as I am almost every day, except when I'm not doing podcasts in Tel Aviv. We're there every day, and so I couldn't be proud, and I couldn't be more fortunate, really, to have a team of honestly warriors that come today every work. You know, in our hiring process, um, you have to specifically mention your passion towards our cause unsolicited. You can be the most amazing software developer throughout your entire hiring process, which is long. If you have not mentioned um, your attraction to our cause and the reason why this is part of the reason why you want to work at Beewise, we're not going to hire you. It doesn't matter how talented you are. That helps a lot bring people in adverse situations, conflicts, and war to work because the war is local. It will pass. Saving the bees is a global issue. It's not going to go away. And we're in a the real war we have is with time. You mentioned this at the beginning, right? Losing 30, 40, 50, 60% every year.
Mm-hmm.
We're 20 years away, honestly. On the planet today, we have 36% of the bee stock we had 50 years ago. That's it. That's what's left. There's no way to replenish beyond that. Once that's gone, it's gone. We'll need a different solution to pollinate our crops. And so that's the real war in our minds. So every minute, every hour, we can sneak in to the office, work, and promote this solution for the bees is important. It's almost like a religion for us. It's not, but it's as strong as a belief, you know, like a conviction. Not a religion, a conviction for people that work at Beewise. And that's one of the things. That's kind of one of the. They all work at Beewise. That's a common thing. But the other common denominator, the other thread that connects us, is we're all passionate towards the mission of saving the bees and protecting our global food supply.
I'll finish with one last question. What can human beings learn from bees?
You know, it's pretty amazing. Every day I go to work, I learn something new from the bees. Bees are part of nature. It's basically learning from nature. And nature is all about risk management. We don't appreciate our farmers as much, but farmers, you know, we think as technologists, we're engineers, so everything is structured and there's if you do this, this happens, and if you add this to that, 1 + 1 = 2. In nature, that's not how it works. It's all risk management. And so bees are an integral part of that, and you learn so much every single day. I can talk about the bees for hours, and you will be blown away how nature has invented neural networks way before we even understood what they are, right? A bee colony is 50,000, you know, dots on that neural network that communicate and decide together democratically what to do. And that's been going on for 150 million years on the planet in every single beehive that we're not even aware. There's just so much to learn from the bees. That is incredible. But I do want to say one more thing while we're at the subject. Some of us take the world for granted. And I want to encourage anybody that's listening to this podcast to apply themselves in their current job or their next endeavor to doing something good for the planet, for the world. It's just as exciting and interesting as doing software in cyber or in defense. But if you apply yourself towards the planet in many different capacities, you can do carbon, you can do ag, you can do different things. Um, if each and every one of us will do a little bit of that, then we wouldn't be in such a bind. We are in a bind on this planet, right? Everybody knows this. We just don't know to what extent. But the world is not going in the right direction. And I encourage people to consider in their next job doing something that is meaningful and impactful to the planet, so we can leave our kids a better place.
We're going to have to do another follow-up podcast because I'm not sure I agreed with everything in your last sentence. But we're coming to the end of time, so I have to leave people with a cliffhanger.
Okay.
Because, Gavin Baker said here that climate change is a solved problem in his lifetime. I think the depopulation of the world is a big problem. And one could argue that the food supply dwindling or challenged, which you're going to fix because technology tends to fix these problems, because innovative people tend to fix these problems, and you will fix this problem, is also somewhat solved, unfortunately, by people depopulating the planet. And so I'm actually less of a doomer about where the planet is going than when you are, because I believe specifically in people like you and in young people who will solve these problems. And I don't think we're in a bind. I think we're going through more complicated points of history on the human level even than we are on the planet level. But it'll be an amazing conversation to have.
I wasn't talking about climate change, Michael.
Okay. Not just climate change, food supply and climate change. I do think food supply is a national infrastructure issue that needs to be dealt with more. I agree with that.
But we're saying the same thing. You're saying smart people will solve it through technology.
Yeah.
I'm trying to encourage people to go and do exactly that.
Amazing. So on that, we definitely agree,
Yes.
which is let's call all the smart people to go engage in doing things where values actually create value.
Impact.
Which is the
real
nature
impact.
of this podcast, where values create value.
Yes. I agree.
Amazing. Saar, thanks for joining us. Thank you for everything you're doing to increase the global food supply and reduce the cost of living, because this is critically important. People are not buying fresh fruits and vegetables because they're too damn expensive. And you, by increasing yield, are helping to bring down the cost of food. So God bless you and Elia for doing that.
Thank you.
And keep up the great work on bringing AI to save bee colonies and robots alongside beekeepers, because we'll live alongside the robots and the AI to make the world a better place. And with that, by the way, I hope we're going to have B-roll, by the way, showing a lot of the bees and the beekeepers and the beehives, et cetera. And with that, thank you, Saar. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can find out more about Saar on X. And his X handle is SAARSAFRA. And you can also find him on LinkedIn under the same name. Having thanked Saar for helping the planet, I should also disclose that I am a small angel investor in Beewise as well, because I could not join him and Elia on this journey to increase the food supply, reduce the cost of living, and improve our planet. Thanks for joining.